Good day to everybody. Rob Mazak here. Those of you who don't know who I am a psychic medium with a lot of really cool and interesting services that I have learned, and some have just simply shown up for me. However, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that side of the house. I am also a pretty avid alternative news guy who has looked at a lot of the different sides of what's happening out there. And of course, I wasn't always this way. For me, it started, oh gosh, me sometime in 2000, I think. I was in an Army leadership school, and one of my classmates was a Black Ops fella, I believe. Forget what exactly he did, but some kind of special operations. And I remember being in a conversation with him, and he talked to me or mentioned that he had been on the roof of a building in Afghanistan, I think it was, and that he had the sights of his weapon along with his partner. He had Osama bin Laden in the sights of his weapon and requested permission to fire, was denied that permission to fire. And that just kind of hit me. I'm like, why would we not take out the reason we went to war supposedly with Afghanistan? He was supposedly the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks and all that. Why would we let him stay alive? And I really got to thinking, well, perhaps this is not what it's all about. Anyway, it really took a really big, deep dive into the rabbit hole of 9/11 and a lot of different things. And I'm not here to discount any stories that are out there. I'm just want to kind of bring your attention to some things, just kind of point out some of the things that I've been seeing and let you make up your own mind. I'm not here to discredit any news outlets. I just want to bring you or make you aware of some things that I've noticed. And since I do pay attention to this a lot, alternative news for me has, or the outlets have been quite informational, and it really helps, if nothing else, force me and probably others into looking at every situation that's reported on in a different light, and not to just take that information on face value, which I think is important because as some of you may or may not know, there's apparently the mainstream news outlets all across the planet are owned by just a handful of people or a handful of companies, and operated in such a way that the whatever it is that they would like the agenda to be pushed out as is pushed out as that. Now, I can't completely validate that, but I've seen a lot of information about that, and it kind of makes sense because if you look across the spectrum at different things, you will really start to see some resemblances between these stories, no matter where you're hearing them from. And on the planet that we have now, so connected, instantaneously we know about things in other countries and everything else that's going on. Different from when I grew up, you hardly ever heard about things. Now it's, if you don't know it, it's because you didn't take the time to look at it, because it's there at our fingertips. We carry those phones in our pocket, and we're instantly connected to the world at large. But what I've noticed, though, that even alternative news sites have really gone off the rails, and it used to have a lot more, what's the right word, trust, or it seemed a lot more trusting what they were putting out on these other channels, because it seemed like a wholehearted effort to give a different view of what was going on. Not that they were always correct, don't get me wrong. Sorry, a little pollen in the air here in San Antonio, but nowadays it seems like even the alternative news channels have just completely just changed, and some of my thoughts are that there are a lot of entities or people, organizations that are simply there to push disinformation and really confuse us and try to keep us from understanding the entire truth. Now, I doubt that us common men will ever really know the entire truth about anything. And, I get it. If you're trying to operate or run, coordinate 8 billion people on the planet, you don't want everybody knowing everything, and it'd just be complete hysteria. Yeah, I get that, because I've been and still am a high end leader in military organizations, and so I understand there's some things you just really don't need to speak about, just to ensure that people are staying civil and in order, and I get it. But at the same time, it would really be nice to know what's really going on. But I wanted to bring forth just a few things that really kind of stood out. Somebody brought up the story about the grounding of all the U.S. aircraft, or the aircraft in the U.S. airspace, rather. The other day, it was, I forget, I don't remember how long it was. I think it was for a few hours. I'm not sure entirely. I've looked at a lot of different stories, and I don't know if I could really tell how long it was, but it really, I think there was like 6,000 canceled flights and all kinds of different things. But that's not the really big story, because this was based on the notice to airmen system that went down, apparently. And I know that's important because I have been an aviator in my past military history. It's been a while. That was back in the 80s. However, those notices to airmen were really important. You could understand the navigational aids were down, new power lines were put up, a lot of different things that were really important to know about that were going on the path that you have chosen or directed to travel. But back in those days, it wasn't done with computers and all these crazy systems. This was actually done through faxes and phones, and so I know it can be done without computer systems, but we've gotten so dependent on those. Guess what? I guess it's not going to happen. Anyway, there was some really interesting theories about what happened. Of course, we can only call them theories because nobody's really, I don't think, explained it properly, or who knows. But a couple of the theories that really make sense, though, is perhaps it was a cyber attack, or one that was put forth as a cyber attack, which would be very disturbing, that someone or something could get into the system like that of the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, and just take things down when they wanted to. No fun. But I think part of the idea of this story or this event was that it seems to be just kind of normal now. We all just seem to kind of accept the fact that, boom, stuff happens, we're grounded, we can't go anywhere. But, could this simply be a rehearsal for times when we're not going to be able to do that? Who knows? I don't know. But my thoughts, just my thoughts, was that the flights were taken down, or flights were grounded rather, because there was some movement in and or out of our country by other aircraft for specific reasons that did not need to be prominent. But just my thoughts. But anyway, once again, we'll never know. But this really brought me back to the thought of all the talk about our electrical grids being very vulnerable now. And this also kind of caveats or segues into the U.S. bank issues with money missing, So I really kind of formulated a thought that I wanted to talk about. Imagine, if you will, that all of our electrical grids go down. Can you imagine that? Every single thing, or almost every single thing that we do in life, depends on electricity of some sort. That could be from the power grid. That could be from even creating batteries. Still requires some type of electricity, or a plant being put together. Our debit cards, our banking system, buying gas, buying groceries, buying everything, purchasing just about anything is dependent on the electrical grid staying up. Can you imagine if it all went out? What do you think would happen? It would be complete anarchy. Nobody would be able to get anything. Nobody would be able to purchase anything. Because now, more than ever, most of our money is just kind of digital sitting in the bank. Well, it's not officially digital yet in the U.S., but apparently that's coming. And so if we're completely reliant on the electrical system for everything, and it gets attacked or gets turned off on purpose, however you want to look at it, it gets turned off. You can't not do anything. How often would you be able to go to work on the tank of gas you have? How would you be able to work? Even those that work from home, if you don't have electricity, there's no internet. No internet, business kind of stops. I know in my business it does, and so I don't know where we would be. That would be absolutely crazy. And now there's a lot of talk about governmental agencies really looking to ban gas stoves in homes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I love cooking with gas versus electricity. It just seems to work so much better, and it's a lot easier. Yes, I do a lot of cooking. But imagine then that if we're, even if the electrical grid goes down, boom, we could still cook. We could still heat our houses in the winter if we wanted to. But if we no longer have gas stoves, we won't be able to do that. So in other words, I don't care how you break it down, people, we are completely dependent on the system as it sits now. And the system is just becoming more and more smart, as you will, smartphones, smart everything. Everything is becoming more and more connected to the grid. There's artificial intelligence now being pushed out. And there's a lot of interesting things to talk about there, but just to make it simple, right? We're reliant upon that completely. So I don't know what you guys are doing to prepare, but and you can't completely prepare for that, because even if you have a bunch of cash laying around, I don't know if you'll be able to even spend it or use it. But guess what happens when the digital currency comes in and cash goes away? Just imagine this for a second. Everything that we buy is going to be monitored and directed. So in a sense, we are going to be limited to what we can buy, when we can buy it, if we can buy it. And if we owe money, they're not going to come knock on our door or call, give it to a collection agency. Guess what? They're going to reach right into our bank and take it. That easy, right? I mean, basically, we're almost at the digital age now, but there's still some options for cash. But that's also being squeezed because, you're not allowed to necessarily have a bunch of cash without documenting where you got it from. And I think that's the biggest purpose behind the IRS, if you ask me, is to ensure that you are working at a job somewhere, somehow, with documentation to prove where this money comes from. No longer could you go really steal money, put it in your bank without being noticed. They are watching. And, like I said, once again, I get it. It's a lot of people on this planet, but that's kind of scary, right? So the other thing that kind of leads me to is a lot of talk about financial collapse right now. United States, anyway, has been talking about the fact that our debt ceiling is now at $31 trillion, with a T, $31 trillion. And I know that doesn't sound a lot necessarily in this day and age, but that is a lot of money, right? And so I doubt we'll ever be able to pay that back, but I don't know who the heck we owe that to. I really don't. I mean, we could talk about that for a while. I do have some ideas, but that's not the point. The point is that At some point, when you're just printing money, so to speak, just dumping money that doesn't necessarily exist or is backed by anything in particular, the system will eventually implode. You can't just keep printing money, creating money out of nothing, and expect the financial economy to continue as it is, right? And so we could talk a lot about that. I mean, banks legally can lend 10 times more than they have in their vaults, so to speak, actual money or gold or whatever backs it up. But then on top of that, they can then lend money on those assets that they have loaned against. So it continues. So to be honest, if I saw a quote the other day, or heard a quote the other day, that if only 30% of us in the United States went and did a bank run, went to demand our money out of the banks could not produce the actual money. That's a scary thought, right? And so, I mean, if you think about it, really, everything's just, if you buy a house, you get approved for a loan, the bank simply types in, say, $150,000 for a home. I know it's a little ridiculous nowadays, but they just create the money. It's not real money, but it is being bounced against an actual asset. And guess what? If you don't pay for that asset, the bank then has real assets based on money that didn't exist. That's just a short explanation. We could talk about that for a long time. But point being is that I've heard this from a number of alternative news people. They don't want just the people that have a small amount of money. They want everyone. They want to control everybody. So really, I can tell you, I mean, I don't make bad money compared to a lot of people with the money that's coming in, but it never seems to be enough. There's always something or some way, some kind of tax, some kind of thing that creates ways, or that has been created to take away from your abundance. And it seems like we're paying tax on everything. We are paying tax on money that's already taxed, for example, right? And it's just crazy. I don't know where this is supposed to stop. In my opinion, money and debt are just simply ways for us to build our own prison without us even knowing that the prison is there. Debt is it's a form of slavery. I don't think slavery ever was abolished. It just got rolled over to include everyone. It's crazy, right? And so, I mean, if you look at money, for example, look at the Ukraine war with Russia. And I call it the Ukraine war because it's, from all practical purposes, the war against Russia is simply running through the proxy state of Ukraine. I mean, I don't know any other way to see it. We know they're supposedly officially at war, yet we may or may not have troops on the ground, any of the NATO countries, but I'm sure we do. Couldn't prove that, but that's just my thought. But we are sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to that country, along with billions and billions of dollars of equipment. We're training those soldiers. So we might as well be fighting Russia. But I will digress on that. But there are some really other interesting things that have happened. Like I've heard this through many sources recently that, and this is not something that's being made up. It's in law. It's been written into law in a number of countries in Europe. I think Oxford is one. I think I saw a story not the other day where they are creating 15-minute cities, 20-minute cities, something like that. In other words, they're going to carve up every city into sectors, sort of like the Hunger Games, right? Where you're only supposed to travel within your sector. And they really don't even want us operating vehicles. And so, a 15-minute walk or bike ride is the way it's written up. And if you want to travel outside of your sector, you have a certain number of allocations to do that. Like if your mother lives on the other side of town, for example, out of your sector, you could only go visit her like I think 100 times or something. And even then you have to have some type of permit or permission. And guess what? In order to enforce that, they're going to have geofences, if you will. They'll know exactly where you are, what you're doing, and they can easily find you. And once again, just reach into your bank account. So, people, that's happening. That's not fiction. That's not something I saw in a movie. It's actually law. I think 2025. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I mean, that would take time to build. I remember saying that to somebody the other day here, and they go, "There's no way they could do that here. There's too many military people here." I'm like, let me tell you, they can do anything they want, and they've proven that they can do anything they want. But it seems like they're doing the old totalitarian tiptoe, as one of my favorite alternative news guys says it. If they came across and just wham blasted us with all this stuff, there'd be too much of an uprising, and they wouldn't be able to do it, right? And so the other thing that's really still been prevalent is the whole C word, COVID. Sorry, I didn't say that, did I? Anyway, it was weird. I was deployed for that almost 2 years, and there was a lot of money thrown around. I'm sure they're still working on reimbursements and things for that. But it was like it all of a sudden just stopped. Everything, all the resources and responses just stopped somewhere in May, June of 2020. I think I wrote an article about that. But it was like just stopped. It's like, well, what happened to COVID? But nothing really happened to COVID. And of course, we all, the vaccines that were not tested over the proper amount of time. I know that because I've been involved in that process, and I know it takes 10 to 15 years to do it right. And unless they did that on the front end before they introduced it into the economy, population, then it was only a few months. So I don't know. Who knows? But I can tell you that they knew COVID was coming. They knew it was coming. They had a Agenda 21 in the year prior, I believe. Yeah, the year prior, about a pandemic based on a coronavirus. And go figure, right? Then it shows up. And so, but one of the things that really kind of caught my interest was I saw a video where somebody pointed out the coronavirus stimulus package that appeared to be put together and presented and put into use within a couple months, really, really quickly, right? But when he even gave the link or the name of the bill and the date and all that. I went and looked at it, and guess what? Official legislation put onto the floor the first time was actually, that bill was introduced in January of 2019. So, can't make that up. It's there in black and white. So I don't know who knows if it was planned, if it was, they just knew it was coming. I don't know. I mean, there's no way to tell, but there's certainly a lot of misinformation or disinformation about it. But now all of a sudden, the vaccine companies are starting to admit and be aware and start digging into the research of this new adult sudden death problem that has happened since the vaccines have been introduced. And even young kids are having heart attacks, and it's crazy. Young kids don't have heart attacks, not normally. Normally it takes time for all of that to come to fruition through bad diet, food. I mean, I said that twice, didn't I? Lack of exercise, a lot of different things, and it usually takes time for that, plaque and stuff like that to build up in your arteries before stuff like that happens. But when 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids are dropping dead for no reason, it's like, But there was a video you might want to check out. It's called "Died Suddenly." I forget who put it together, but anyway, I watched it, and it's just the evidence is staggering that something is happening, and it's not good. And I'm not saying that there's ill intent. I would never say that because I don't know. But there's something definitely going on that is undercover, if you will. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of, talk to you guys about some things. I just want you to understand that you should keep your head on a swivel and do yourself a favor and research some of this stuff. I'm not saying go down the rabbit hole and lose yourself in all the bad things. But it is nice to know what's coming, and so that when it comes, you're not the last person to know. That's the way I look at it, because I don't think any of these things that are happening, I just mentioned a few, I don't think that there's any way we're going to stop this machine. I don't believe that there's any way we're going to be able to put the brakes on it. And we've just become too embedded in the system. And this is what we know. And so taking the system away, it will simply put us back into caveman days. And nobody wants to do that. So we're kind of, this would be called a dilemma, right? We don't like what we're seeing, but we certainly don't want to go back to where we've been. And so therein lies the issue. Even if we were to take down this quote-unquote cabal, as they call them, wherever they are, who's then going to be in charge? Would it be any different? Probably not. So I want to just kind of finish up with the different aspect is fighting anything we become anything we fight against, right? You shouldn't fight against war because you're no better than the people that are pushing war, right? I think Mother Teresa said, don't ever invite me to a war rally, invite me to a peace rally. So really, during this spiritual awakening time, which is really here, everybody is all of a sudden feeling something that they have no idea what it is. So many clients have come to me with that happening, and they're trying to get some kind of explanation. And fortunately, I've been on this road for a while, and I can help them understand it a bit. But we are on the high end, if you will, of a civilization where consciousness is going to be reaching a point where it's almost hard to distinguish between this reality and that reality that's outside of us. You can call it the spiritual world, you can call it whatever, there's a lot of names for it. But that which exists outside of us is become much more tuned to our consciousness. And so the veil is thinning, whatever you want to call it. And in some of the research I've done, guess what? Many societies have come and gone. Look at the Atlanteans, the Marians, all these different things where for example, they've evolved to a point where, technology was astounding, and all of a sudden they were gone, right? And there's a lot of theories as to why they wiped themselves out or they were wiped out. Doesn't matter. It happened. I think, if I remember correctly, there's about 5 previous civilizations that have come and gone on this planet that we can document, I believe. Anyway, there's a few for sure. And so are we possibly nearing the top end of where our civilization may be in danger of being wiped out or wiping our own selves out? I don't know. But point being, let's take advantage of that close connection with that spiritual world, or whatever you want to call it, and really work on ourselves from within. Because right now, as we know it anyway, we can control ourselves without any outside interference. We can affect ourselves, and it is very difficult to affect anything external to ourselves. It doesn't matter what it is. Even in a relationship, in a job, the markets, none of that stuff we can entirely change. We can help, but where can the most bang for our buck, if you will, happen? Within ourselves. We can go within and change who we are. If we change who we are, we can help change the environment perhaps, but it has to start with us. So anyway, I just want to leave you on that more positive note, and I shall digress. You all stay strong, live your life, and drive on. Talk to you soon.